Hey there, I'm Russ. Welcome to Explorations All Over. Today, I'm taking you south. Basically, as south as you can go, down to the seventh continent, Antarctica. A destination that is becoming more and more popular every year. Cruise lines now have purpose-built ships designed specifically for adventure cruising. I indicated in the last episode that I would share with you the more sensory moments that I brought back home with me that made the journey unforgettable. This trip is going to be a bit wonky. It was 3 weeks long, starting in Chile, down the western coast of South America, across the Drake Passage to Antarctica, then back to the Falkland Islands, and ending in Buenos Aires. So the Antarctica portion was just a third of the experience. We were anticipating drama. After all, doesn't Antarctica instill in most of us a sense of awe, wonder, and remoteness? There were moments of undeniable drama. The breathtaking moment, a whale breached in the distance, so close you could see the spray from its spout. The roar as a chunk of ice sheared away from an iceberg and crashed into the sea. The unsettling pitch and yaw as the ship navigated the infamous Drake Passage to and from the continent. There were moments of laughter, watching large colonies of penguins waddle in and out of the water. But before any of that, and everything that was to follow, was the journey there. Do you know the feeling of it's almost here anticipation when you take a vacation, regardless of the destination? Well, imagine that feeling within the trip you've already started. Every day feels like holding your breath, closing your eyes, and imagining what lies ahead. But deep down, there's also a level of fear. Fear of going into the unknown. Fear of being so far from civilization. Each morning and evening, we'd go out onto our balcony, and all I could hear was the gentle sound of the bow wake of the ship as we made our way further and further south. Just then, in the thick fog of the frigid morning air, a sense of peace and calm would wash over me. I have to be honest, we'd heard of the Drake Passage, the sea where the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans meet, the fury that the sea could unleash, tossing ships around like toys in a local pond. Our captain actually delayed our crossing for a day due to reports from other ships that it was just too rough. Safety first? Definitely. Terror-inducing? Most definitely. Someone doesn't get on a roller coaster because they think it's mild. They want the thrill, the adrenaline. Awe. Awe-inspiring. Heart-stopping awe. That first morning, walking out onto the balcony that just seemingly hours ago offered up churning seas and a bracing sea spray, now offered up a landscape like no other. Colors: blue, white, gray, cold. Can you feel it? Sound: nothing. No cars. No planes. It wasn't just no sound, it was the absence of sound. We had arrived. we were here. Deep breath. But where were we? There was nothing to give you perspective. There's the shore, but how far away is it? There's a glacier, but how high is it? There's snow and ice, and I didn't have to ask how cold it was. Antarctica teaches you very quickly that you are terrible at judging anything from afar. Antarctica reveals to you part of our planet that only up to now has existed in your dreams. No National Geographic special can prepare you for the sheer scope of what the continent offers. And yet, standing there on the balcony of my warm, safe shipboard home, I couldn't escape the thought that this vastness, this impossibly old ice, was also incredibly fragile. So incredibly fragile. I don't know if I can adequately share with you the very first outing onto the continent. I know I can't. Gear on and into the Zodiac. It was a cold like I've never felt before. Holding onto the ropes on the side of the Zodiac, the sound of the engine roaring in my ears, and wondering, just how cold is this water, as we zoomed to shore. The snow-covered mountainside began to tower over us, ever more massive and imposing, dotted with little orange spots. Oh wait, those spots were people, like me. Then it all came into perspective. This wasn't some snow hill. This wasn't some patch of ice. This was a gigantic mountain, rising hundreds of feet into the air. Titanic is more like it. Awe reimagined. And then we stepped onto the continent itself. Okay, if I'm being honest, we stepped into the water, what's referred to as a wet landing, and the gear did its thing. Thick wool knee socks, heavy-duty rubber boots, and insulated pants. All of it did its job. Walking onto shore, we were in a canyon of ice and snow, knee-deep as we began the climb up. Slow, trudging, heart-pounding. Somehow, I was sweating. We began to climb to the top, our boots sinking mid-thigh into the ice and snow. Everything was white and gray. In the distance, seemingly miles away, was our home, resting gently on the glassy calm of the sea, glowing with the promise of warmth and refuge. But this is what we had come for, and here we were. Words weren't necessary. A hug was wholly appropriate. On a distant hill, a group was watching a massive sea lion dozing happily. A spray of red nearby, evidence of a recent feast. Here we were, at the end of the earth, completely insignificant in this landscape that has existed through dinosaurs, plagues, and wars. It came time to reboard the Zodiac and return to the warmth of the ship, and a hot shower. But as we pulled away, I looked back at where we had just been, land we had just touched. It grew smaller and smaller with each passing second, and I couldn't help but feel that somehow, in that brief encounter, I had been changed. If you're enjoying this kind of travel storytelling, the kind that stays with you, I'd love for you to follow Explorations All Over on Facebook or Instagram and subscribe wherever you're listening. It helps these stories find the people who need them. Antarctica repeatedly broke the human ability to measure, compare. It didn't do it subtly. The scale of it was all just incomprehensible. It was hard to wrap your head around it. One afternoon, we were sailing in the Southern Ocean during the beginning of our time there. It was late in the afternoon. The skies were gray. The wind was cold, and the little bit of light was fading. The captain came on the PA and invited guests to go out onto the deck. He pointed out an iceberg in the distance off the bow of the ship that was almost aglow in the fading light, capturing those last rays of the day. No worries, no Titanic moment here, just ice and distance. He asked the passengers to guess 3 things: how far away the iceberg was, how high it was, and how wide it was. You could hear people laughing and talking animatedly. Some sounded confused, others guessing confidently. Some started calling out numbers. There was no point of reference to measure the iceberg, nothing to compare it to, no trees, buildings, or familiar landmarks, and no horizon to speak of. Then the captain came back on the PA and told us. The iceberg that seemed maybe 5 miles away was just over 20 miles away. You could hear people gasp. How high? People called out 100 feet, 200 feet, and when someone called out 500 feet, people scoffed. Over 1,000 feet, the captain said, and, he went on, only 10 to 15% of the iceberg is visible above the waterline, which meant most of it extended over a mile beneath the surface. Finally, he said, the iceberg was over 5 miles wide, enough to land a 747 just on one half. Silence. Heads shaking in disbelief. Most lowered their cameras and phones, completely at a loss for words. Don't believe me? Check out the picture I posted on the Explorations All Over Facebook page. What would you have guessed? Standing there on the deck, in the frigid cold, it was completely silent, just as everyone took in the enormity of the vastness. This moment, this revelation. Beyond the icebergs, the land itself felt almost severe. Charcoal gray mountains rose straight out of the sea, wind-scoured and stripped bare, their faces wrapped in ice and snow. Glaciers caught what little light remained, flashing briefly as the sun slid lower, while low clouds drifted just high enough to hide the peaks. Every so often, far off in the distance, a pod of whales would announce itself, a sudden burst of white against the steel blue, then nothing again. No approach, no spectacle, just a reminder of scale and wilderness unfolding on its own terms. The silence didn't last forever. For all its stillness, Antarctica isn't empty. It's alive. We'd be standing quietly on our balcony, wrapped against the biting air, when a sudden plume of white spray would burst from the surface of the sea below. The unmistakable spray of whales out there in the distance. No warning, no announcement, just movement. A reminder that even here, life was always in motion. We wanted to be a part of it, not just watching from a distance, but down at eye level. We took 2 kayaking trips, small groups, quiet paddles, the kind that put you right on the water. I'd hoped for the big moment, a whale breaching nearby, the kind of thing that looks great on Instagram. That didn't happen. What we got was something quieter. We were drifting in a small cove near a group of seals. The water was motionless, smooth as glass, when suddenly, and without warning, a pair of dolphins surfaced about 15 feet from our kayak. We could hear them breathe as they passed. We didn't move. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking with adrenaline. A few moments passed, and they were gone. Then, just as quietly, they reappeared. This time, no more than 5 feet behind us. I held my breath. They dove again and disappeared beneath the surface. It was a reminder that they weren't there to perform for us. Maybe they were just as curious about us as we were about them. A minute later, we saw them, farther along, already moving on. But for a brief moment, we'd shared the same space, and that memory has never quite left me. Out there on the water, it became obvious how exposed we really were. And Antarctica doesn't let you forget that for long. Every outing began the same way, with preparation. Not the kind meant to make you comfortable, but the kind meant to keep you functioning in an unforgiving place. Layers, thick and thin, wool against skin, fleece, insulation, bright orange outerwear that isn't meant for fashion, it's meant for visibility, for warmth, and for survival. Chunky mittens that make even simple movements clumsy. Heavy boots that remind you with every step where you are. Without all of it, comfort disappears quickly. And once you're separated from the cocoon of the ship, you understand how thin the margin really is. You versus the elements in their home territory. And suddenly, you're grateful for every layer. After Antarctica, we expected more of the same. Instead, South Georgia surprised us. It was warm. So warm, we wanted to unzip our gear, and weren't allowed to. Standing in Grytviken, surrounded by wildlife and the remains of an old whaling station, it was impossible not to notice the layers of history here. This wasn't just a place people passed through. They lived here, worked here, built an industry here. And now, the animals had reclaimed it. We had one final stop. There were penguins, a rookery we visited, noisy and full of life. But there were also gift shops selling local wool and refrigerator magnets and cute trinkets, pubs selling ale and fish and chips. Familiar signs of everyday life, including a classic British telephone box. After standing in places that felt untouchable and indifferent to our presence, it felt like a return to something easily recognizable, boringly comfortable, safely human. And strangely, that familiarity landed with a quiet sense of letdown. We just come from one of the most environmentally hostile places on Earth, a place that demanded humility and offered no accommodations. Our last stop reminded us that the world we left behind was still waiting. It wasn't wrong, it just wasn't Antarctica. And I realized how quickly wonder can dissolve the moment reality creeps back in. And that's why I travel. Not to check places off a list or say I've been somewhere most people haven't, but to feel this shift. To step, even briefly, into a world that operates by different rules. A world that doesn't accommodate you, doesn't perform for you, and doesn't care if you're comfortable. Places like Antarctica strip everything back. They overwhelm you. They humble you. They remind you how small you are. And somehow, how alive that makes you feel. And then you leave. You return to warmth, to noise, to familiarity. And there's a quiet letdown in that, not because home is bad, but because you've touched something rare, something that doesn't linger easily. But the feeling stays. Long after the ice, the wildlife, and the silence are gone, what remains is the knowing that the world is far bigger, harsher, more beautiful, and more fragile than we move through it believing. And once you've felt that, it's impossible to forget. If this episode stayed with you, there's more waiting for you beyond the audio. I share photos, short videos, and moments from these journeys over on the Explorations All Over Facebook and Instagram pages. It's a great way to see what I've been trying to put into words. If you've listened to this and wondered whether a place like Antarctica is something you could do, or even want to, that question alone probably tells you something. This kind of travel isn't about bravery or toughness. It's about curiosity, about being willing to be uncomfortable, to wait, to not be in control, and to let a place change you, whether a little or deeply. It's not for everyone, and it doesn't need to be. But for those who feel that pull, the daring to step into something so unfamiliar, sometimes the hardest part is simply believing it's possible that you could just do it. I'm Russ. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey. This is Explorations All Over. Until next time, I'll see you soon.